The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings, alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway, noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's. Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit. And since it is Friday and a rainy one at that, what a great time to watch the latest episode of The Week That Was here on Deadline Detroit. I have so many different stories to talk about this week. We are never short of fun things to get to. And I always have a wonderful panel with me to help me sort out all the nonsense that is out there. Alan Langle and Nancy Derringer of Deadline Detroit are my regular guests every week, and I appreciate them so very much. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
That's part of my week.
We also have attorney Todd Perkins joining us once again. We appreciate it, sir.
Hey, thank you. Thanks,
and a first timer on the program today, attorney Mike Ratai with us. And we appreciate you being here, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig. Pleasure to be here.
Well, you know, I was excited that you were actually anxious to be on the program because most people sort of do it kicking and screaming, you know, but I appreciate your enthusiasm and willingness to do this.
Well,
I
got to say that, you know, Alan Langle's a dear friend of mine, and he's been twisting my arm. And then when I heard that guys like Perkins and Fishman and some of these other clown lawyers were on, I had to be on it too. I love this guy, you know.
Misery loves company.
We're off to the races.
Todd's my buddy.
We have a whole lot to get to this week. And I want to start out here in Michigan because obviously we're going to get to Trump stuff here in just a little bit and COVID stuff and so many other things. But I want to talk about Michigan here for just a second because it now looks like James Craig, former police chief, is going to announce his candidacy next week on the Tucker Carlson show, which is a strange place to do it. You'd think that he would want to do it here in the state of Michigan, perhaps with maybe a press conference, something along those lines might be the way to do it. But the other little tasty nugget that came out yesterday from Mears News in Lansing, the Michigan Information Research Service, they cover the Capitol, was that they're hearing rumblings that Betsy DeVos may throw her hat into the ring for governor here in the state of Michigan on the Republican side. And I'm thinking to myself, that would be a fight that I wouldn't mind watching. Betsy DeVos versus James Craig to see who can out-Trump the other.
Yeah.
How much fun would that be, Nancy? Betsy DeVos. I mean, because she has been our Schmuck of the Week nominee on how many occasions?
A lot of occasions. And as far as fun, I guess if you're talking about a primary fight, yeah, that could be fun. I shudder to think of the money that she could throw into the general election, which is always, I mean, even though it shouldn't be, it's always a factor in these races. And it would be it's pretty clear that they have to find somebody other than a white man to you know, so, which is why everybody was so excited about James Craig, hey, a black Republican. But you know, if they get somebody like Betsy DeVos and it becomes like Betsy versus Gretch, that I would not be looking forward to. That would not be fun.
Well, I mean, self-financed campaign is always a big deal. Oh, go ahead, Todd.
But you know, here's the thing: once the novelty of James Craig announcing as governor and being a black Republican, that's just a novelty right now. Because you know, you see, they're already coming after him, talking about he can run finances, and apparently some of the information was that he filed for bankruptcy twice. I mean, it's just getting started for him. And, you know, Betsy DeVos being self-financed, and I'm sure people are going to throw money at her, at her campaign all the way. You know, the reality is he cannot, you know, that fight, I just don't think he would win. I don't think he's going to win anyway. I don't think he's going to be the candidate for, I just think, I told you a long time ago, I think it's, you know, I guess I might be wrong as it just being a ruse. Maybe he truly believes this, but, you know, him announcing on Fox News, that's an ability for him to fundraise on a national level. You know, that's why he's doing that, I believe. But, you know, I know we're going to talk about it more, but I'll leave it there.
You know, let me just, and I agree with Todd. I mean, the other thing too is not many people outside the city of Detroit know who James Craig is, you know, and the fact that he would announce his candidacy on Tucker Carlson show, I mean, is this a family show? That's all I want to know. I mean,
It ain't
say what's on your
Disney.
mind. All I have to do is click a little button later on.
Yeah,
Just let people know.
I know this isn't a podcast, I mean, it just, I never really thought that James Craig was a very smart guy anyways, because I do a lot of work for criminal work for both police unions. And I know Craig, and Todd knows Craig. He ain't the brightest bulb in the lamp. And over the course of a primary battle and then potentially a general election, he'd be exposed for the moron that he is. So,
I was just
go ahead, Alan.
In reference to Nancy talking about DeVos, all the money that she can put up. Don't underestimate Whitmer. Whitmer is, her family has money, and the Democratic Party would put up some money. So I don't know that she would be blown out of the water by finances alone.
No, I don't think so either. But I also think, and I also believe, and let's cross this bridge when we come to it. I don't think Betsy DeVos is nearly as popular as she thinks she is.
Well, according to the quote they had in MERS, she's been asked by more than 2 people to run. More than 2,
okay.
Which is like, okay, was that 100? Is that 3?
Was that her husband? Like, that's the sugar. And by the way, I think you should run for governor.
Well, like I said, every party loves a self-financing candidate. If they can get that, that's great, because that's that much less money that they have to pump into these races. And I think this will be competitive. But, Todd brought up the story that we broke actually on Deadline this week about the past bankruptcy filings of James Craig. And the response from the campaign was interesting. They came out with a statement the next day saying, well, I can see that Whitmer unleashed her minions to do this. And of course, Violet did the story for us. And I'm thinking to myself, have you read Deadline Detroit? I mean, look at the stuff that Charlie LaDuff has been posting on Deadline about Governor Whitmer. I hardly think Deadline is anybody's minion. And as I said in a tweet last night, I said, Violet would take me out if I ever decided to run.
Plus, it's funny because I happen to know the genesis of that tip, and the tipster, the idea that individual is also a minion is laughable.
There is an organized anti-James Craig movement that is already beginning on the Republican side. They've got a Twitter account, The Real James Craig. Yeah, you can look it up and find it. And they're putting out all kinds of stuff.
That's a Republican account? I figured that would have been like Detroit Will Breathe or something.
No, they're basically saying he's not really a Republican. It's like the real James Craig. He's not a Republican. He's a Democrat. Look at all these things that he's done. So there's going to be some resistance to his candidacy. It's going to be interesting to watch there. But let's talk about another race here. It looks like Dana Nessel may have an opponent on the Republican side,
if you can call it that.
Yeah.
This guy, what's his name? DePerno.
Matthew DePerno.
Matthew DePerno, who has been one of these big lie proponents here in the state, announces he's going to run against Dana Nessel. I mean, if that's what we're going to put up, I don't know. He's been
the number one lie proponent. And speaking of announcing on a show, he chooses Your Defending Fathers, hosted by Trucker Randy Bishop up there in Antrim County. It's
right.
And apparently his lawyer. So Trucker Randy's his lawyer is DePerno. So
of course. I mean, Trucker Randy's went off the deep end a long time ago, and this guy is just his fellow floater in the deep end.
Well, the guy shouldn't be a lawyer. The guy should lose his bar card immediately. Any lawyer that has perpetuated the big lie should lose their bar card.
I agree.
That seems like that might be happening over there in Judge Parker's courtroom.
Good transition there, Todd. You should be hosting this program. I wanted to get to that.
It's you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a weird comment that just came in.
What's that?
From Patrick's time, it said BLM is against the nuclear family. Really?
Wow.
Okay.
Maybe that individual doesn't like black families. That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Clearly, this is some guy who's commenting right now on YouTube. By the way, the big lie is that Biden won. All right, Patrick, I'm glad you're watching the show. You're going to find a lot to disagree with here today, but welcome. The more the merrier.
Good morning,
the
Patrick.
like button and the subscribe button for me, buddy. I appreciate that.
Do you see how dangerous this is, though? I mean, honestly, there's people out there that are so ignorant. And I mean, they're not well-read people. Okay, and they believe this nonsense that they get on Facebook. They believe this nonsense that this garbage that they put out on Fox News, and here we are, okay, with our democracy literally up against the wall. Okay.
I think one of the dangerous things about this, though, Mike, is that, you've got this sanctions hearing that took place in Judge Parker's courtroom this week. I had a podcast about it with Barb McQuaid earlier this week, if you want to know what went on there. But basically, the judge spent 6 hours just taking apart these affidavits that were filed and just going after these attorneys for not doing any real vetting of any of these affidavits. Some of the affidavits were even from different cases. They weren't even involved in the Michigan case. They filed them anyway. And she basically tore them apart for 6 hours to determine whether or not they're going to have to pay these court costs and the cost that the city and state had to incur to defend these lawsuits, and also potentially refer these people to lose their law license in the state of Michigan if she decides to go that way. This was a meticulous takedown. But the problem is that they're going to see this as the quote unquote machine working to, again, keep people quiet about the truth. This is all part of the deep state. And I'm like, no, these judges are doing their job by calling attention to the bullshit that we saw here.
Well, of course. But it all starts with the idiot Trump, okay? And the sycophants, in the House and Senate and throughout the country in these Republican legislatures. And I can't think of one thing that's more of a threat to our democracy than the perpetuation of this big lie. Okay. So, we're in big trouble. We're in big trouble in this country.
Could I also add the other big threat to our democracy are the Republicans who still have functioning brain cells, know it's a big lie,
right,
but are willing to peddle the big lie in order for political.
Well, but it's all
Kevin
about
McCarthy.
maintaining white power.
Yeah.
It's all about white power. This is what this is all about. These people see that this country is not, the white people are not going to be a majority in this country in the next 10, 15, 20 years or whatever. And they're all scared to death. Trump has tapped into their fears and given them a platform over the last 4 years. And here we are. And literally our democracy is on the ropes because
it is. But I'm a believer in America. As a defense lawyer, we have to be, look at the glass as being half full, because most times the prosecutor just doesn't even want to give us the glass, just throws water at us, right?
Right.
But here's the thing, here's the big lie. The big lie is the number of people who actually believe this are a small minority, but they have this voice and they have this bully pulpit through the president. And, because look, there was a poll, I believe, and I can't remember the actual number, but it was far less than 30% of the actual of the population in America is Republican. Far less. So they're outnumbered by that. But if they vote in blocks, they can win, and that's how they've scared those people who, look. It's like it's snowing in July, right? There's a situation in which you have Cheney, who's the leader, who is really, I look at as the true leader in the Republican Party, because she's standing up to what she knows to be a big lie. And, right now they're throwing a deluge of shit on her, and she's standing right there in her shoes. Go ahead.
No, I just want to finish your point, but no, I want to tell.
I'm finished because I could just go on like a run-on sentence, and I'm not saying it more. Okay. I can't say anything more, but
we were talking earlier before the show started about the Washington Post reporter's book that just dropped this week called "I Alone Can Fix It." But one of the anecdotes in there that, I have to keep remembering, Liz Cheney is not a good person just because she is unwilling to believe the big lie and promote it. But I kind of felt like we could have a couple drinks together and enjoy ourselves after I heard that when they were evacuating the House chamber on January 6th, and Jim Jordan says, "We need to get the ladies first," or something like this. And he went to approach her to shepherd her ahead of him. And she said, get away from me. You fucking caused this.
I saw that, and we're going to get into that book a little bit later on because I think it's kind of important. So yeah, but I do want to get back to the fact that we're starting to see some punishment come down for the people that have been perpetuating this and pushing this, especially on the legal side of things. The lawyers that got involved on Trump's behalf to keep pushing these cases when they clearly hadn't done their homework. They hadn't done any due diligence. They were just in a rush to throw something and see if anything stuck to the wall. You guys are attorneys at the bottom of my screen here. How do you feel about them facing sanctions? Should they? And what should be the long-term repercussions?
Well, they should lose their law licenses. I mean, period.
Yeah.
And Todd knows this.
Yeah.
I mean, when you file, I mean, we're criminal lawyers, but if when you file papers in federal court, okay, you have to have some legal or factual basis for doing so. The shit that they filed was just made up lies, and there was nothing to support the things that they filed. So just based on that, they should be sanctioned. But for perpetuating this big lie, they should lose their law licenses, period.
Well, just a fair warning to everybody out there. My schmuck of the week later on this hour is going to have something to do with the ongoing push for voter law changes in various states. This one will be in Texas because it's a pretty heinous example of them doing anything they can to scapegoat somebody for this notion of widespread voter fraud, which clearly does not exist.
I'm glad I've got about 35 minutes to pick my other schmuck of the week now.
Were you going with that one?
No. You go with that one because it's going to be. I'm going with a repeat schmuck of the week, but it'll tie into that. I had a couple
foreshadowing. This is called forward promotion, everybody.
And Craig, you should and you should note that this morning, lawyers that filed these fraudulent papers in federal court in Colorado are also have their asses up against the wall by a federal judge, the same way that the ones here are up against the wall in front of Judge Parker. So you're going to see more and more of this throughout the country.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Where these lawyers are going to, be called out for basically violating the oath that they took when they, passed the bar, and how some of these idiots actually passed the bar is still, I can't get my arms around it, but whatever.
I thought that I don't want to log roll too much for Craig here, but I did listen to that Barb McQuaid podcast, which was very concise. It was like in and out in under 30 minutes, which I always appreciate in a podcast. Now that podcasts can be so bloated. But she made a really good point, I thought, where she said, a judge will forgive a lawyer who makes mistakes.
Right.
But he or she will not forgive one who deliberately lies. And she said this seemed to go far beyond mistakes. This was a coordinated strategy to, as you said, promote the big lie and overturn an election, and that is an unforgivable sin in a democracy like ours.
Our friend Patrick's Time, who's commenting on the YouTube page today, says there's no chance Biden got millions more votes than Obama, and I would suggest to him, actually, yes. It's very possible.
Have you been to Oakland County recently?
Exactly. It's entirely possible, Patrick, and it actually happened because they've been recount after recount. Turnout was really, really high because a lot of people were really engaged. And part of the reason that a lot of people voted who didn't vote last time around in the last couple of elections is because the stuff Trump said made them upset. They didn't like him saying things that made them feel like they were less of an American than other people. They showed up to vote because they didn't like the racist stuff they were hearing. They didn't like the craziness that they were hearing. They showed up to vote him out. Mm-hmm. It happened. It just happened. Didn't Democrats try to overthrow the 2016 election? No, I don't recall that they did.
No,
I did Hillary Clinton give a concession speech.
Yeah, absolutely. There was
that's how dumb these people are.
Well, like I said,
talk of a recount, and in Michigan, it didn't happen because of
I think there was the ceremonial, person in the House that objected to the certification, as we saw. I think it was, I can't remember, somebody from California, I believe, but objected to the certification of the 2016 election. But that's as far as it went. It didn't go anywhere else.
You know what the big problem is, Craig, and you guys know this. I mean, you guys are in the media, okay? These people, that subscribe to these conspiracy theories and the big lie, okay, which is at the top of the list. They don't read the paper. They don't listen to the news. They watch Fox News and they get their news off of Facebook, okay?
Yeah,
that's where they get their information from. And that's why they're misinformed, to put it nicely, okay?
I was talking to somebody the other day who was trying to be open-minded and said, well, yeah, I've heard there's still allegations, so I guess we don't know. And I said, you know what? The BBC, there was a report. The guy was alleging, what was it, like 10,000 people in Wayne County, dead people voted. And the BBC took a sampling of 31 names, just random samplings, and it found that 28 were still alive. One woman had died. She voted absentee in October or something and died before the election.
Which
and then
validated her vote.
Right, the last two were guys who their fathers had the exact same names. They were living in their father's residence. Their fathers had passed away, and one accidentally took his father's and didn't use his absentee ballot, and the other one did use the right absentee ballot, and it was a clerical error at the clerk's office. And so that was 31, a random selection. So
right. These people are so full of shit, and all of this has been we've been through this several times about why all of these things that they keep bringing up. Dead people voted. The turnout was 100 million %.
131%.
Yeah, exactly. All this stuff, all of this stuff has been disproved, and yet they don't seem to care. They just keep it up over
did anyone see the story this week about Facebook being responsible for a lot of the dissemination of this madness, because Facebook allows the unresponsible proliferation of information. They're not checks and balances. And Zuckerberg's on the hot seat. Like, what are you going to do to stop these people? Because they say a lot of this stuff comes from it was related to a report about vaccinations, and the Surgeon General was he says, look, if you get this information and it's not, you suspect that it might not be true, don't repost it, because Facebook's not doing its job in preventing this stuff. Just like they did, all of the companies came out and have shut Trump down off of social media, which has really stopped a lot of this. Because just imagine if he had his Twitter account and his Facebook account, I would hate to be. Hey, Mike, wouldn't you hate to be his lawyer not beside him being a morally decrepit individual, but just him not listening to advice? How many clients do we let go who don't listen to us? I don't have time.
We get rid of clients that don't listen to us. Okay, I mean, you've done it, I've done it, and
wasting your money.
Well, the biggest thing about Trump is he doesn't pay his lawyers. Okay, okay? He doesn't pay his lawyers. But then, of course, he doesn't take their advice. He just does whatever he wants because he thinks he can just do whatever he wants. And if there is a God, he will be indicted, and hopefully he'll be behind bars, because that's where he belongs.
Well, that remains to be seen. I'm not holding my breath for that, but at this point, I'm just happy with him not being in the Oval Office.
I still want to see Ivanka do the.
What is the old saying, Ellen? It is enough. If he's only removed from the Oval Office, it is enough. He's
got to have some kind of anchor on him so he can't run for office anymore.
Well, we shall. But hey, let's get to this and keep going though on the voting stuff, because Texas obviously is working to pass some pretty strict voting rights bills that would eliminate like drive-through voting, which they utilized to great success in places like Houston, and a number of other changes that would require certain IDs and put some stricter controls on mail-in voting in Texas, which already has about the strictest mail-in voting provisions in the country anyway. But the Democrats in the state legislature basically took off. They chartered a jet. Somebody chartered it for them. We're not sure who the donors were, but I'm sure somebody did, to Washington, so they could talk to legislators about the importance of passing something on a federal level to make sure that these laws don't get passed in 27 states, I think, are considering them right now. A pretty bold move on their part. Of course, they're getting a lot of criticism from the right, suggesting that they're not doing their jobs and they should be jailed when they get back. At the same time, their trip to Washington is shedding a whole lot of light on this and bringing a lot of attention to the issue on something that everybody a couple of weeks ago said was dead. So what do you think about the strategy of the Democrats in Texas to take off and keep, pounding this issue, especially with people like Joe Manchin?
Go ahead. I got something to say, but go ahead, Todd. You got something to say?
I totally do. What about it's incredulous that they're threatening these people with arrest, upon return to the state of Texas, and I'm going to hold my comments a little bit about Manchin, because I'm going to tell you right now, that's again going to be my schmuck of the week. You know what I'm saying? So, what he did when he approached those people went to approach him, and what he did, I'll say for that. But no, I mean, much to what Mike says, I say this in jury trials, especially when I have people who want to say and claim that they are woke, so to speak, particularly white juries in Macomb County. I said this a long time ago, and I've been saying this, when it's an issue and not, when it's an issue that it's relevant, I tell them the death of America is our failure to deal with race honestly. Let's deal with it. I mean, I can see in how they're doing right now, 100 years from now, when we're long gone and, when we're gone from this earth, and it's been about 250 years since racism has been, or slavery has been around, they're going to describe slavery as almost some type of indentured servitude. They're trying to nullify, and that's all this pushback is, because what people are saying, I didn't enslave anybody. That is factually true. But this, just like we got the same vice president who's saying there's no systemic racism in America. Something. I mean, it's all
not for him anyway.
The death of America is our failure to deal with race honesty.
Absolutely, 100%, and that's why I wanted Todd to go first. But this whole voter suppression thing is about one thing, and it's just pure, unadulterated racism. That's all it is. It's to stop black and brown people from voting, okay? Because now they are becoming the majority in this country. And these Republican legislatures don't want black and brown people to vote. And so here we are. I mean, we're back to Jim Crow. That's where we're at. We're going back to Jim Crow, okay?
This is all
about racism. Pure, simple, unadulterated racism.
I would agree. However, I don't think this is about black and brown people are not going to be the majority. What's happening is that we're becoming more of a multiracial society where it's going to be a plurality rather than a majority.
True.
And so, which is an argument for why we have to learn to get along better, not to split up more. But as Todd says, you don't deal with a problem until you acknowledge that the problem exists.
Well, I mean,
and as long as you want, I've seen some of these textbooks that are marketed to like homeschoolers and some of these classical Christian academies. I mean, it's like it would have been laughable in the 50s, for God's sake, And so anyway, by the way, on the Texas legislation, they've done this before.
Racism. It's all about systemic racism. White people don't want to acknowledge it. And as a society, we have to acknowledge it so we can move forward. But obviously now, because of Trump and his racist band of fools, okay, we're kind of we're in a tenuous situation right now in this country. But until we deal with systemic racism, we're never going to be able to live out the at least what our forefathers envisioned, even though they were slaveholders.
Right.
So I mean, but this country is full of examples. I mean, look, when they slaughtered the Indians back in when Andrew Jackson was president, we slaughtered Indians. Okay, we enslaved people. We brought them over on slave ships, and it's not taught. It's not taught in this country. Okay,
right.
White people don't want to acknowledge it. They don't want to know about it. They don't want to hear about it. Okay, and until everybody understands that our country has a history that is not comfortable in many ways. We're never going to be able to move forward. And it's up to people like Todd and I and people like you in the media to continue to fight the fight.
I mean, I think part of the big problem, though, is the ignorance of history and people not really understanding the full scale of that history and what it's meant, and not being willing to go down that rabbit hole to learn a little bit more. I mean, you mentioned, of course, a slave ship a couple of minutes ago. There was somebody on Facebook the other day that was talking about having to wear a mask on a plane. And she's like, oh, this is like being on a prison ship. And I'm like, no, actually, it's not. Prison ships were horrible places, like rampant with disease and death, ship. And slave ships, obviously, a lot of the people didn't make it across that journey. But I'm like, now people want to sit there and think that a slave ship was like, oh, you got free passage and a job when you got to America. Yeah, I mean, come on. It's not going to hurt you if you are out there to learn what really went on and what some of the underpinnings of our society are based on. If it helps you sort of think about things going forward or how we could actually make things a little bit better, that's not a bad thing.
Nazi Germany, I was going to say, look, Nazi Germany, I mean, that's part of the curriculum there in schools in Germany. They paid reparations, right? Pretty quickly after the war. We're still ignoring, and I always say, look, the Jews were slaves in Egypt, and that was horrible. And so when did it suddenly become, many, many years later, when did it become okay to like have slaves again? It's never been, people talk about, sometimes I'll hear people say, well, the presidents and all, they were slave owners, but those were different times. But when was it ever okay to take another human being and treat them like an animal? It was never okay. It was never okay. And people say, oh, those were other times. But it's like, look, there were enough people, and obviously we ended up at war. There were enough people who said at some point, this is horrible. Slavery is not right. And we're willing to die for it, to fight against it. And so
when South Africa finally did away with apartheid, one of the first things they did was hold a Truth and Reconciliation Reconciliation Commission, and hold nationally televised hearings where people could come forward and speak of their experiences under apartheid. And, it didn't fix everything in South Africa, but it certainly is the kind of step forward that I think we have never done in this country, and we need to. So,
absolutely.
Well, and our friend Patrick just said leftists want to treat Trump supporters like animals. No, we don't. We want you to get vaccinated. And we want you to move on with your life.
Like you do to your dog.
We hope you are healthy and prosperous, my friend.
That's what we would like to see. Patrick doesn't seem to understand that this is an entire system that's set up in place for people that look like me to not necessarily get the same advantages that Patrick gets, even though, and that's a general statement, a very general statement that takes a lot of dialogue to support. But again, what we have here is a very system. America has never gotten beyond these racist ideations that we have, and these ideas of whether it be inferior and different things of that nature. So we have not gotten to the point like Germany. Yet Germany did so much right away, and they went to it did reparations on a global basis. They acknowledged what happened to the Jews in Germany, and not only Germany, but over in Russia too. So but Stalin was just crazy. He was killing everybody. But at the end of the day, they acknowledge this and on a global basis. It's always that, but all these other things. But again, even with all that Germany has done, you still have people running around with 6MWE. I don't know if anyone knows what that is. There's these Trump supporters that say 6 million wasn't enough.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen this? I could not believe it. I saw it about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I didn't get a chance to start screaming about it on your show the last time. But when I saw that, I could not,
Well, Todd, according to
when I saw it,
Hitler did some good things. According to Trump, Hitler did some good things.
That's the story. That's where it came out.
Yeah.
And you remember the last time we were here? Yeah. Look. What's the guy that just died? The Secretary of Defense that sort of took us into war. He's staying in Mount Misery, the same place where they used to correct slaves that didn't want to adhere to rules.
Can I speak to Patrick for 1 second? Every animal in my life, and at this point, I think I've had 3 dogs, 2 horses, a rabbit, and a couple of goldfish. And each one of those animals has gotten good care, veterinary care, brushing, kisses, food that they needed at great expense. And I am not willing to provide that for Patrick. So he's going to be disappointed on that score.
All right. Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. Hold on a second.
I want to say that we were talking about
real quick, Alan. Go ahead.
Okay. Just the whole 6 million Jews stuff and all that. I mean, when I saw the Camp Auschwitz sweatshirts at the Capitol, that kind of turned my stomach. My mother was in Auschwitz.
That's right.
And just the anti-Semitism of that sweatshirt was just nauseating.
It makes you want to throw up.
Yeah.
Actually, it makes me personally want to find that person and take a K-bar, and I'll stop there. Okay. You guys know what a K-bar is? You know what a K-bar is?
No, but it sounds dangerous.
It's a knife, okay, that has some edges in it, and it's used for only one thing. So yeah.
Well, let's move on, shall we? And this one was too funny to pass up because I mean it's not funny. If it's true, it's certainly not funny. And I'm not sure that we've seen independent verification of these documents that the Guardian came in possession of this week that were allegedly from a meeting at the Kremlin back in looking before the 2016 election. And in this report, and it was basically Putin and a bunch of his top lieutenants basically talking about how they wanted to mess with the 2016 election. And they definitely wanted Donald Trump because they saw him as a, quote, impulsive, mentally unstable, and unbalanced individual who suffers from an inferiority complex.
Where could they have gotten that?
They also said that they had some compromise on him. And there are also some indications that they were working him to be an asset of some type for a long time. But the compromise that they said they had was from his previous non-state visits to Russia. So there are things that might be in there.
The P-tape lives.
It's possible.
You know what? This ain't news, okay? Because anybody with a half a brain that watched Trump during his tenure as president of the United States knew that he was nothing but a Russian asset. And Putin pulled off one of the greatest intelligence coups in the history of the world, okay? Because he did help get this idiot elected, which did create turmoil in this country, which we're still experiencing to this day. So Putin got everything that he wanted, and all you had to do is watch Trump lick Putin's boots every time he talked about Russia.
You know, here's the thing: when you got
news,
you got to appreciate the fact that Russia has the GDP, is my understanding, of California.
Right.
That's it, and yet he's able to control this guy. So no, what people don't understand is Russia was a well-played thing because he's been compromised since the 80s when they started giving him loans. They started giving him those loans through Deutsche Bank and you know, and he's always, there's nobody who would lend him money in this country because, you know, they know how he's going to do. They know he's going to, he's going to scam. He's going to file bankruptcy. You know, that's another reason why I don't think he's worried about these recent tax charges against his COO, because that guy's more afraid of the Russian mob than he is of Trump or anything that they can do to him, because, hey, they'll go for your whole family, you know. So
that was Manafort. That was Manafort. Manafort was more afraid of the Russians than he was of
the
Justice
Department. Well, it's an interesting read. If anybody wants to go check it out, it's Guardian has it.
It's a little squirrely, and it's
a little squirrely. Absolutely.
But it's also, again, as somebody who I am a believer, and I really want to see the tape before. Exactly.
I think the one thing Trump did manage to do through January 6th and through the post-election questioning is that he really sent a message around the world that democracy is not so stable. That particularly here in America, the prototype for democracy around the world, and we realized, you know, people looked at it and said, that's not democracy. Look what they're doing in the Capitol. They're beating the shit out of
one of the things that was.
No, they went for a nice walk, according to Putin. They were going for a walk.
Yeah.
And according to Trump, it was a love fest.
Yeah, they just fell into the Capitol. One of the things that was just kind of reported as an aside in this Washington Post book that I mentioned earlier was what his second term priorities were if he had been reelected. Withdrawing from NATO. Okay. Breaking our defense agreement with South Korea. That was the other one. I was like, what the actual what?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, withdraw from NATO, the alliance that has kept the Western world safe from war for 75 years. Just they're not paying their fair share, man.
All he was doing was Putin's bidding.
That was a text from Putin.
It was.
It was a text from Putin. Get out of NATO.
Yeah, get out of NATO. Exactly.
All right. So we've got about 20 minutes left. We've got a lot of stuff that we need to get to. Yeah, we do. Look, the Larry Nassar story is pretty bad. I mean, it's been bad every step of the way. Every group that was responsible for making sure that these kids in the gymnastics program were okay failed. Mm-hmm. Now the FBI, it's revealed, screwed up the case. They didn't investigate it for over a year, and they're saying somewhere between 70 and attorneys for victims say it's more like 120 other opportunities for Nassar to abuse victims during that time, where they basically just sort of blew it off. Then they lied about it because they said that they notified other branches of the FBI closer to the, to Lansing. They didn't. There's no record of that anywhere. One of the FBI agents was talking to the USOC about it and used his opportunity to talk to him to see if he could get a job, as opposed to, investigating this kind of stuff. And then once the Indy Star actually ran the report about Dr. Nassar and the stuff, that's when they finally started taking it seriously. But that was a year later. The FBI has some splaining to do on this one. I'm not sure what sort of repercussions these agents could face for their failure to do what they were supposed to do in this case. But, I was talking to one of the victims on TV last night, and she's angry. Rightfully so. Just that, this went on for a lot longer than it had to. FBI, we normally, talk about them in these glowing terms in this country, but they're going to have these hearings now this summer, and that's going to open up the FBI to a lot of questions about a whole lot of things that aren't even related to this case.
Lingle,
I think there's potentially discipline that can happen. Derailing of careers, but what the FBI takes even more seriously beyond just lapses in duty is lying. They take that very, very seriously, and the fact that some of these agents lied afterwards, they're going to pay for it in one way or another.
And I mean, but for me, and this is the point I was trying to make last night, the fact that they sat on this, first of all, the USOC sat on it for 41 days before they even reported to the FBI. Meanwhile, told the families to keep quiet about this. We're working through it. Don't say anything. They were more worried, again, about their reputation than they were about justice for any of these people. But I think it's indicative of how seriously they don't take these cases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And why don't more women immediately go to the police and report these things? Well, now you know.
Yeah. So I mean, just this is going to be ugly. And
it's a classic case.
Did we lose Alan?
I mean,
no,
it's criminal.
Acting out.
Well,
can you hear me?
He's got bad Wi-Fi. So hang on for just a second,
Hello?
Alan. But yeah, there you are.
You're packeting out, as they say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
It doesn't seem like anybody's really that anxious to chat on this.
It's just criminal that. Yeah.
Well, we shall see what happens.
Well, it's just criminal that the ball has been dropped. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. So, but that's fine.
Can you hear me? Hey. Yeah.
All right. Well, we definitely have to get to COVID. This Delta variant seems to be wreaking havoc on a number of parts in the country. And you start looking at the numbers and what's going on in states where there are low vaccination rates. The cases are climbing. Missouri, Arkansas seeing a big spike. Florida seeing a spike right now as well. And you look at the numbers of the people who are getting hospitalized and who are dying. It's well over 90% of them are unvaccinated people. Yet we still have people like Laura Ingraham going on television telling people not to get vaccinated. Tucker Carlson telling people not to get vaccinated. Fox News basically spending a whole lot of their time telling people not to get vaccinated. You've got Ron DeSantis in Florida selling T-shirts saying, "Don't Fauci my Florida." Meanwhile, he's got a vulnerable population of elderly people down there, many of them who haven't been vaccinated, that could fall victim to this. We are still stuck in this weird political world when it comes to the efficacy of these vaccines. And people are clinging to this notion that it hasn't gotten full approval, so it's just a giant experiment, and we're all going to grow tails or something in a couple of years. Yeah. I'm not sure what they think is going to happen as a result of this. I've had this vaccine in my body since March. I
Me
feel
too.
just fine.
Me too.
Just, I mean, but I look at what is allowed to proliferate in terms of misinformation about this vaccine, fake science, people using bad numbers and bad faith arguments to tell people not to get this. I mean, anti-vaxxers have always been out there.
Right.
But the level of which they're taking it to now, and now they actually have the backing of a whole network, a couple of them actually, trying to do this. The Surgeon General yesterday had to come out and say misinformation is a threat to the public health. And I'm not sure what he can do about that or what that means, but it sends a pretty strong signal that these people are out of their minds.
Yes, they are.
These are Trump people. Trump politicized the whole COVID-19 thing.
Yeah,
and he's politicized the vaccine. Although we know that he got it himself. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, there's the hypocrisy, right? But these people out there who can't think for themselves and are willing to, follow
This is
the Jim Jones of the 2000, of this century, and I mean, and there's no explanation for it. It's just stupidity. This is
why I am all in favor of vaccine passports. In fact, I think a little tattoo on the wrist, maybe something like that.
Come on now.
I'm just saying.
No.
All I'm saying is,
that's what's happening next.
We need this, and we're not going to get back to normal, whatever it is, until we get more people vaccinated. And I'm just absolutely done with that. So anyway,
yeah, it's just, but
and these are the spikes that are happening. Same people who.
Go ahead, Alan.
He's breaking up again.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say. Can you hear me?
Yes.
These are the same people. These are the same people who are complaining that the businesses are being shut down, and yet they're helping be responsible for businesses being shut down.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the people that are dying in this country from COVID right now are the people that are unvaccinated. End of story. Okay.
It is true, but people still won't get it, and I'm just not sure exactly what it's going to take to get them there. I'm not sure enrolling people in a lottery is going to do much. I signed up for it because I wouldn't mind winning a few bucks here and there. But at this point, if they're not getting it, they're not going to. And I'm just trying to, because it's not like you can't find it; it's available everywhere. But instead, they're sitting there talking about going door to door, potentially asking people if they've been vaccinated, if they'd like to be vaccinated. But people are equating this to some sort of government control program that they're going to come there and start asking you all sorts of personal questions and forcing you to get the shot, which is never going to happen. Like I said, it keeps getting shrouded in more and more conspiracy theories. And we seem especially willing these days to buy into all of that. And I'm not sure how the Biden administration, Governor Whitmer, or anybody gets past this to get the adequate number of people vaccinated so that we can actually start to approach some sort of herd immunity to this, because it doesn't happen naturally.
I had lunch with a former Trump supporter, but a Republican. I call him a reformed Republican. And he's conservative. And, all of the things that he would suggest or he would state as far as his support of or previous support of Trump and things like that had nothing to do with the vaccine. He is a true believer about the vaccine. He was telling me about, his daughter and his family went down to Florida for spring break. Wife's vaccinated, daughter not, friends not, wife doesn't get the virus. He's a hockey player. He's got the vaccine, and then they've got a guy. That was a big issue, and he is one of the only people that didn't get the virus in this hockey league that he was in. And other people who didn't get it were people who had the vaccine. So he's, it's clear, and he's healthy, just like I've been healthy. Knock on wood, but. My kids, my kids beg me to get it, because they're at home, going to school at home. But during the summer programs that they have now, I see the need for them because they're interacting more. But my kids beg me to get for them. So they have it. So, I don't see, that's another big lie. That's another, thing that I think it's just a trailing tail that since Trump did, these are all, and most of these people who don't support it. I understand there's some people before this vaccine came out, there's some people who are anti-vaccine anyway. And, so I understand some people who don't like vaccines, and I don't get it, but it had nothing to do with this. I think this COVID vaccine is more to do with Trump than it is anything else.
I wrote about vaccines.
I agree.
I wrote about vaccines some years ago before Trump ever came around, and I talked to a doctor about it. He said, why people are anti-vaccine? Because because they've been so successful. He said, ask your grandparents if they're still alive, or your parents if they're still alive, if they're anti-vaccine. My mother saw people die or be crippled for life from polio, from diphtheria. That kills a lot of babies. Childhood diseases, measles-based encephalitis. It was just common to lose children in the 19th and the early 20th century before a lot of these vaccines came into wide adoption. And so, maybe what we need is for people to start losing 9-month-old children from whooping cough. And maybe that, I'm not saying I wish it would happen. All I'm saying is what is it going to take for people to understand?
But there is something that I actually need to sort of bring into this, and this was a potential Schmuck of the Week nominee here. But there was a guy on Newsmax. He's a host of Newsmax. His name is Rob Schmidt.
Yeah.
Can I read what he said here? That wasn't anybody's schmuck, was it?
No.
Okay, so he used to be on Fox and Friends first on the radio, which tells you about his bona fides. But he was on Rob Schmidt tonight on Newsmax, and he was talking. He's like, I'm not an anti-vaxxer or a pro-vaxxer. But here's what he said. He said, I feel like a vaccination in a weird way is just generally kind of going against nature. If there's some disease out there, maybe there's just an ebb and flow to life where something's supposed to wipe out a certain amount of people. And that's just kind of the way evolution goes. Vaccines kind of stand in the way of that. And I thought to myself, okay, if that's the case, all right. So we should just, we have the technology to prevent a whole bunch of people from dying, yet we don't do it because that's Earth's balance here. And another commenter here says, when America's problem is they don't have faith in God. They should just put their faith in God to protect themselves. And I'm thinking, maybe God sent us the vaccine. Is it possible?
That's what I tell people. Yeah.
Is it possible that that's what happened? That he gave us the brains to actually come up with the technology to fight some of the diseases that get put on the planet? I'm just saying, if we have the knowledge to combat these things, then we're not disrupting evolution. We're not disrupting the natural ebb and flow. We're not disrupting it.
Always reminds me, the whole
It is part of the natural ebb and flow.
The whole God thing is that little adage where the guy's on top of the roof and the village is flooding and a canoe comes by or a rowboat and they say, jump in. He goes, no, God's going to save me. And then the water keeps rising. And then
he drowns.
Another one, he finally, the helicopter comes and they try to save him. No, God's going to save me. He goes to God and says, God, what happened? I thought you were going to save me. God says, yeah, I sent you 2 rowboats and a helicopter.
Dumbass.
And that's what's happening here is that, yes, God has sent a vaccine to help save people. And they're like, no, God is going to save me. It's like, God is like.
No, this guy sounds like somebody who watches Marvels too much. Infinity War. He's like that guy Thanos who felt like I have to obliterate half of the population of the universe in order for the universe to be able to continue to sustain itself. So, it's ridiculous. What we're doing is we're learning how, as bad as I feel like with climate change and things of that nature and the increase in population is putting such a strain on the earth, what it is it's also causing us to think more about how to be able to live in this world and grow and evolve intellectually so that we can live in this world in a way healthy and not have to rely upon a virus to knock us out and for you to tell people not to get it and not to use it.
All right. Well, we're running out of time. So without further ado.
And now it's time for Deadline Detroit's nominees for Schmuck of the Week.
Our former president, proudly wearing the crown of king of the schmucks. So we can't name him because we named the trophy after him. It's the Donald J. Trump, J stands for Genius, Schmuck of the Week Award. So with that said, and I know that there's some people watching right now, and I applaud, I appreciate everybody watching, sticking through here and commenting whether you like us or not. It's a big deal. I thank you. But we do this every week where we come up with somebody that we think is deserving for a Schmuck of the Week nomination. I've got like 5 nominees this week. I had them by Tuesday. So I'm going to start with one that's not my official Schmuck of the Week, but just because I didn't want to forget about it. But mine is Stephen A. Smith from ESPN.
Stephen A. That guy's been a schmuck for a long time.
Yeah, he has.
And now we've lost.
I have a friend who was a lead writer for him. And,
for Stephen A. Smith?
Yeah.
I used to edit his column in when I was a sports copy editor. And I remember thinking, man, I should have gone into sports writing. This stuff is terrible.
No, you know what it is. You got these ESPN personalities. Go ahead, Craig.
Sorry about that. Well, I was going with Stephen A. Smith, and I was trying to open the link to the story.
Oh, and you threw yourself off. Okay.
I clicked on the wrong damn thing. But Stephen A. Smith was talking about baseball in the All-Star game. And he was really upset that Shohei Ohtani, who is of course the guy who pitches and bats for the Angels of Los Angeles. He's great. He's a total sensation. He of course is from Japan, and he was worried though. He doesn't think it's going to help baseball because he said, "I don't think it helps that the number one face is a dude that needs an interpreter so you can understand what the hell he's saying." And he said it's hurting the game because he doesn't speak the English language. And I'm thinking to myself, as somebody who loves baseball, I love watching this dude play. I don't care if he speaks a lick of English because the dude can pitch and he hits huge bombs all the time.
And besides,
he's the first guy since Babe Ruth to do this kind of stuff.
Look at the Tigers. I mean, the Tigers have had so many play. Cabrera's English is not very good. I mean, a lot of these guys, and nobody
not good with their rookies either.
Right. Nobody, who cares? I mean, and it's not a new phenomenon. I mean, Saturday Night Live used to do that whole thing like baseball been very, very good to me. I mean, that was about foreign players.
The 7-foot-tall Chinese guy that
Yao Ming?
Yao Ming, yeah, him. Did he hurt basketball? I don't think so.
No, he did not. He was pretty good.
He actually took basketball on a level to China, and now he's an ambassador over there that has expanded the league. And
there you go.
People's desire. Although Japan has always had a competitive baseball league, a lot of players have gone over there to play, and have made more money because there's more opportunity over there. Sometimes with different teams, but no, this is that. I just think that it's almost
what do you call it?
Ethically discriminatory. Clearly,
yeah. Well, he did come back and apologize a couple of days later.
He should.
Yeah, well, but it takes him a while because he's always like I have the best takes in all of sports. That guy drives me nuts. But
okay,
all right. Hey, you know what? I'm officially the Schmuck of the Week for causing that calamity a second ago. So go ahead, Nancy. It's your turn.
All right. I only wanted to go first because it relates to the last topic we started.
Okay.
Or talked about, and that is my Schmuck of the Week is Senator Janice Bowling, needless to say, Tullahoma, Tennessee, who apparently is on the Tennessee Government Operations Committee, which has been the lead mover, the prime mover in the firing of the Tennessee Public Health Director, who was in charge of that state's COVID program for the crime, I say, of inquiring with the Attorney General for legal guidance on whether they could vaccinate older minors. They're called mature minors. These are kids who are like 14, 15, 16, and 17. Is it possible for them to come in and get a shot without a parent? And that's all she did was she just asked about it, and she sent a memo out about this to shot providers for this crime. Senator Janice Bowling, who is, I'm just going to, since we've already gone into explicit language territory, I'm just going to call her what she is, which is an ignorant ass peckerwood, is spreading anti-vaccine propaganda and got this woman fired from the job that she was hired to do for doing the job that she was hired.
Well,
to do.
and the woman who got fired wrote a hell of a letter.
A spectacular
so,
which you can find at the Tennessean, Nashville, Tennessean newspaper.
Well, the problem is that people in Tennessee can't read that letter anyway.
Ooh.
So she's got to go to D.C. Maybe they don't have
You're a regionalist.
I've got something to say about that, doesn't he?
All right. Who wants to go next with their schmuck nominee? Mike Rattay, who do you got?
Boy, I had to think long and hard about this one, Craig. But it's come down for me, Eric Smith, the former Macomb County prosecutor.
That's a good one.
Okay.
That's a good one.
I mean, there's nothing worse. Crooked cops are bad, okay? But there's nothing worse than a crooked prosecutor, someone who wakes up every day and thinks of who he could put in prison. And yet he is a criminal himself. So my schmuck of the week is Eric Smith. We already know that he's pled guilty in federal court, and now he's embroiled in a preliminary exam on a number of state counts, I believe, out in Sterling Heights. And, I always thought he was a schmuck, but now he's proven it to the rest of the world that he is a schmuck. And good riddance, Eric Smith. You're a real piece of garbage.
Wow. Okay. There you go. All right.
And if you knew anything about his policies when he was prosecutor, he is,
right.
It's everything to add on to what Mike said. I mean, the high and mighty, the heavy-handedness, the lack of empathy, the one, pandering to the audience,
right.
just to get on TV. It would, yeah. No.
So he wasn't the equivalent of the guy on Perry Mason, the prosecutor that Perry Mason always beat.
No, he was the
antithesis.
he was the antithesis of that guy.
Yeah. Okay. Who wants to go next?
I'll go.
All right. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah. Mine is Joe Manchin again. This guy is at the he's approached by the Texas Democrats. And, they want to ask him about the filibuster because they're coming to D.C. because if you can't vote on the enactment of this federal legislation to prevent these anti-voting laws, I mean, they're clearly anti-voting laws. They are. I don't know what you want to call them, but you can't put perfume on a pig. It's still a pig. Right. And that's what these things are. And, he comes out and he expresses to them that the filibuster issue never came up. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I have a feeling it did.
He wants to walk around and he recognizes the power that he has. And he recognizes this, and yet he calls himself a Democrat, but I call him a blue dog Democrat. And you know who those people are. Those are the people that after the Civil War, they were Democrats, but, that's the reason why black people never voted for a Democrat until we got to Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Right.
My grandfather was a staunch Republican because he couldn't see any way around that because of what the Democrats in the South did. He's perpetuating that right now. As Mike Rattay said, in the law, it's not plagiarism. We're just borrowing and working off something that somebody said that was great. And so Mike said something great earlier. And this is Jim Crow. We're revisiting it. And it's just called something different under a different name. And just because you can pass it because you got the votes doesn't make it right.
Right on, brother.
All right. Alan Lingle.
I'm going to pick Lynn Wood, Attorney Lynn Wood, who was one of the participants in the hearing, the sanction hearing on Monday. And Lynn Wood is like, Your Honor, I don't know how my name even got on here. And I didn't even, and then they go to Sidney Powell and she goes, well, he did give me permission. Well, there must have been some confusion because Lynn Wood has been one of the crazy people involved along with Sidney Powell. They equal
hangs
crazy.
Out with Mike Lindell.
Throw in Mike Lindell and Rudy Giuliani, and you've got a whole lot of crazy.
I don't disagree with that one, and the fact that he tried to basically say, "Hey, it wasn't me," it's not going to hold water with the judge. I don't think in that one. I'm going to go with this one real quick because this is my actual schmuck of the week, and it is Ken Paxton, who is the Attorney General in Texas.
Yep.
Now, of course, we've been talking about Texas lately and what's going on with the legislators who left to basically not have a quorum, so they wouldn't vote on these voter suppression bills. Now, here's the problem: they were so anxious to have some instance of voter fraud that they could put up there to show that these laws were necessary and needed. So they pick on this guy named Hervis Rogers. Now, Hervis Rogers had been sentenced to burglary charges. He got 25 years in Texas jail for burglary. Now, he ended up serving 9, but he's been on probation for 14 years or something like that? He had 2 months left in his probation. Now, and there's some confusion as to whether or not his probation was up or if it was still in effect because of the timing of when he actually went to jail. He was confused about it. He registered to vote. They allowed him to register to vote. He then casts a ballot in the election. And so now he's being brought up on charges of voting illegally, which could land him back in jail for up to 20 years.
He's got a $150,000 bond.
Yeah, $150,000 bond. One guy, one vote in Texas.
Huh.
And here's the thing. Yes. Did he vote improperly? It's entirely possible, but there may be some wiggle room. But did he know it? No. When he went to register to vote, he's got a plausible argument that, hey, they allowed me to register. I assumed I was eligible to vote. When your parole is up, you are indeed, or he was on parole, not probation. He was on parole. You're allowed to vote when your parole is over. And he thought it was over. And so now Ken Paxton saying this guy's a danger to democracy, a 62-year-old man who already was sentenced to 25 years for burglary. First of all, I can't fathom that. That's longer than a lot of people who commit murder go to jail. And it's just, it's shocking to me, but they were so desperate for a scapegoat, somebody that they could put forward as being proof that there's rampant voter fraud and we need to crack down. So they pick on this guy, Hervis Rogers. And I hope to God he does not end up going to jail for this because this is ridiculous. Paxton, who by himself is under indictment at the moment, is a real scumbag. And of course, Greg Abbott, the governor in Texas, was more than happy to have that announced the day before they went on this push for this legislation.
Well, there's three scumbags in Texas. Your boy Paxton, the governor, and the lieutenant governor. Three scumbags.
Has everyone given their schmuck?
Yes, I believe so.
I believe I am getting one call after another from Patrick, our jerk-off commenter before. I have gotten now 14 calls. He's calling me every...
He's calling me too.
He's calling me
get your numbers?
3 or 4 I don't know. Mine's out
calling
there.
my office phone.
And he's
nice.
I decided to pick it up because I had just gotten a flood warning and I thought maybe it was like a recorded call from the city, but he called me a freaking lunatic. So
well, that's
Patrick,
good.
Patrick, you're worse.
If you go back and read his comments,
Patrick.
just go back and read his comments on the YouTube page for Deadline Detroit because that's where he's been posting them.
Him that much
I'm just gonna say you'll understand where he's coming from and what he's doing. So
meet me someplace.
Patrick, I want to watch you and Mike Ratai like mix it up a little bit.
That could be fun. All right, well, we've got to wrap it up for the week. I appreciate it, everybody. Mike, thank you for joining us for the first time. Mike Ratai, we appreciate it very much. We'll have you back.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you,
all right.
Nancy.
Todd Perkins, as always, we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Love Todd.
Thanks.
Alan Lengel and Nancy Derringer. Wish I could join you guys this evening, but alas, I cannot.
Weekend.
But I appreciate you both being here as always. Thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering the broadcast. Thanks to Lynette's Shrimp House for sponsoring this program. I always appreciate that as well. And of course, Deadline Detroit. Thanks to them. And don't forget, you can become a member at Deadline Detroit very easily. Just $3 a month to get the great coverage that is out there. A lot of great stories we broke this week alone that are there. Sign up for our newsletter there, which Nancy pens every week. Become a member, though. DeadlineDetroit.com/membership. It's easy to do, and you'll help keep this little ragtag bunch of roving reporters going for a little bit longer, which we do appreciate. Have a great weekend, everybody. And thanks to all of you for watching. We appreciate the comments, even if we vehemently disagree with many of them that come in. But that's what America's all about. This is, of course, how we do things in this country. We work things out without fighting with each other physically. So let's keep that in mind. Have a great day, everyone. Have a great weekend. And Alan,
drive home safely.
And free Fenster.
Free Fenster.
There you go. The Craig Foley Show on Deadline Detroit is made possible in part by Lynette's Shrimp House, located in Highland Park. It's Metro Detroit's premier destination, serving juicy fried shrimp, fish, and wings alongside soul food sides and new additions to the menu like turkey tacos and desserts. Located at 13548 Woodward in Highland Park, just north of the Davidson, Lynette's is open for takeaway noon to 8 Tuesday and Thursday, noon to 10 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and noon to 5 p.m. on Sunday. Call now, get some Lynette's.